Expressions, your number one youth current affairs show, hit the streets to speak to young people about the importance and the relevance of their mother tongues. Do they feel in this modern days, especially when we're talking about issues such as 4IR and employment, that knowing their mother languages is going to give them that edge that they require? And this is what went down.
I don't think young people take pride of their language because most of them are talking English now.
My mother tongue is Xhosa, and unfortunately I can only speak it. I do not know how to write, nor to read it. I did Afrikaans as my first language, so I was used to it.
Here at university, you never use them at all. Even when you are communicating with your peers, you don't communicate in your indigenous language.
But at school I learned isiZulu, Afrikaans and isiSotho. I can read, but writing it, if I was to compare it to English, I write English better.
If, for example, isilungu sasaba, I'm gonna use my home language because you can't always use English everywhere you go. You know, not everyone knows English.
Abantwana bamanje kune English kakhulu ezikoleni zethu. So bakuzointroducewa ilimi lethu lasekhaya. So kwazi ukuthi ama-marks wethu we-home language improve ezikolweni.
Although with some of us, well, we still do keep our roots like I do.
I believe that Africans are too woke. That's what they say, because we consume a lot of information that we get from the internet and social media.
Especially if learners don't understand in English, they'll try in a way to mix with their home language so that they could understand.
They're not really important. Like, they're only important in high school. Then after matric, I'm not gonna use them anymore.
Hello, South Africa. A very warm welcome to your number one youth current affairs show. Of course, Kibalalaga Expressions. This is definitely the place for you to air your views. I'm your host, Jacqueline Mapala. You know, as South Africa continues to break the shackles of apartheid and redefine a renewed and imagined decolonized perspective of the country's issues regarding the promotion, the development and the growth of indigenous languages is taking center stage. Now, when we're looking at Section 6 of subsection 2 of our constitution, it requires that the state, our country, South Africa, our government, takes practical and positive measures to elevate the historical diminished status as well as to advance the use of our country's indigenous languages. Kholosa.
Yinyaniso emsulwa leyo Jacqueline Jimlo ke ukholosa kalubisi uMadlongoti. Siyakubuza ke apho ekhaya into yokubana uyayibona na into yokubana kufuneke kufunekile kuphuculwe ulwimi lwenkobe apho eMzantsi Afrika. Qiniseka ke into yokubana unxula nathi kumakhasi onxibelelwano. Iyo lonto ke ijelo losasazo iSABC iye yavuselela lembali kanti yokubana kuphuculwe these indigenous languages. Into ethi ke yonke wena uzasifumana izindaba ngolwimi lwakho iSABC ekhaya. Kodwa ke ngaphambi kokuba singene enzulu siqovule lomba wokuphuculwa kwe-indigenous languages, ke siqhubele into sikuphakele yona ye-SABC ekhaya.
I-SABC News iyokwethulela i-channel entsha yendaba zamalimi wesintu ngo-2023.
African News Channel ka-DTT itakweshela mahungu hi ririmi ra wena.
Ngakho ke zithole ngesiZulu,
ngeSixhosa, limi la Setswana,
Afrikaans,
Xitsonga,
kaSepedi, kaSesotho,
ngaTshivenda,
ngeSiswati,
ngeSindebele.
Lefana ka SABC shimaka mutingathi uyitshela ukwadisela maphungo ngalwambo lwa damunye.
amahora angamashumi-24 nsuku zonke. Khumbula futhi ngolimi lwakho.
Izokukhuthaza elutsha lokuthi bazi ukuthi basukaphi nokuthi bangalibali ngelimi labo.
Eka nkarhi lowu taka yin'wana vumundzuku lava ma nga ta tirha mi himela eka mahungu ya Xitsonga.
Umuntu uzangcono namxoxela indaba ngelimi lakhe.
We will have blogs, we'll have shows in which we package all current affairs and bulletins in our 10 languages. And you will see it's not going to be a replication or a translation of 404. It's going to be a totally a new channel with its own rhythm, its own features, which will I mean, it does not necessarily mean the person who will be watching the channel will not be watching 404, because these are going to be completely new channels.
So it is absolutely exceptional, and I think it's such a game changer for SABC to be promoting indigenous languages through this particular news service that we are going to provide for you, ekhaya, as a young person, just in general. But to help me unpack this very important conversation, I'm joined by my esteemed panelist. A very welcome to Expressions.
Thank you very much.
So this issue around indigenous languages is a critical one, right? Because as Expressions, we were able to be on the ground and speak to young people. And I also have to mention the fact that we also have on Zoom Prof. Loli. Prof, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much for being part of the show. Thank you for adding that feminine quality to this conversation. But thank you so much for just really being part of the show. But gentlemen, young people on the ground are saying, Uti, the value of indigenous languages really comes down to their ability to speak to their grandparents. They're saying, Uti, I mean, what value does my ability to speak in my indigenous language actually have? And I think maybe, Prof, I can pose this at least question to you, because they're saying if I don't know how to speak English, I'm a meme.
Oh, protocols observed.
It is now my singular honor and privilege.
Oh, I just dropped my hearing.
I'm lost. Nobody takes me seriously. So why are we promoting indigenous languages if it doesn't serve me and doesn't have any real value for me?
Thank you very much for the question, Jackie. It starts with understanding what heritage is all about. Heritage is who we are. Now, if you unpack it, it's not just limited to, food, dance, and dress. It's a lot more. It's about a value system. It's about norms of society. Now, for you to fully appreciate yourself, your heritage, you have to, understand your language. So if someone understands the connection between their heritage and the language that is attached to that heritage, they will then start to appreciate their language more. So what is happening currently is there is a disconnect between understanding what your heritage is as a people and the language that you speak to express that heritage.
When we look at the language of economics in this country, when we're talking about professionalism, when you're looking for a job, even just purely job application, for you to have access into an institution of higher learning, it's all in English. Now, when we are saying to them, it's all about the culture, it's all about this, are we not setting young people for failure when we know that the modern world that they're part of is purely directed and dominated by English?
It's important to promote mother tongue education purely for the sake of depth of knowledge. Go to any other countries that are first world countries, part of the G8, the G20, you'll see that they value their own mother tongue languages for the depth of understanding, and their economics is not necessarily based on English, but it's based on the depth of understanding, but English is a communicating mechanism. And what we should be doing is that making that option available in our schools for me to be able to study in my Xhosa or for you to be able to study in your Pedi, but ultimately use English as a language that they can use secondary to be able to communicate the economics and being able to participate, applying all of that. But the depth of understanding is where we lack in our system, and that's why we probably find that even the quality of our outcomes in our education becomes a problem, because a lot of learners drop out of after grade 4 when they have to transition from their mother tongue into English, and then they lose that depth of understanding.
Prof. Loli, what are you doing in terms of the development, the advancement, actually the evolution of indigenous languages in South Africa? When we're having conversations around 4IR, science and technology, Internet of Things, that our languages are on par with where other languages are going in terms of those developments?
Africa is the only continent that is fostering education in a foreign language. In all other continents in the world, they teach their children learn in their mother tongue. But when you come to the Africa, the dark continent, the word they use is that we then foster education in a foreign language. But coming back to your question at hand, is that when we do educate, or what we do in my sphere of life, full-time at UCT in the multilingualism education project, where I eat, speak, and make sure that the students that come at university level, they use their languages, then that is what I promote. And then as the pencil, then we then say that we support any other institution or structure that wants to make sure that all the teaching and learning material is available in indigenous languages. We have terminology development in various, we call them domains, in various domains, be it in law, be it in engineering, be it in science, and we are assisting together with the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, the Language Services Division. That is, we support that. And then as penciled by ACT, the Pan South African Language Board, as the current chairperson and also my predecessors, we then ensure that we standardize, we authenticate, we quality assure the teaching and learning material that is in our languages, so that we don't give our children the material that is not quality assured. So we have to start somewhere. We need to make sure that our languages are used by our children and everybody else. Otherwise, they will die a natural death.
But maybe there's also a different conversation around how, as young people on the ground, we can showcase the value of our languages, because we are now seeing it in music, we're seeing it in media as a whole, we're seeing it in when people are acting, they're speaking vernac and so forth. So maybe there really is value in our languages, and it's not just purely just in you being able to speak to your granny, ne? You actually can really find a very powerful value in how we embrace our languages as young people on the ground, especially in this modern day. But we continue with this very important conversation after the break. You're watching Expression.
Hi Expressions, igama lami ndinguthanda ukukhanya Mabele. I am here nechomi zami neclassmates zami, so ndizozibuza imibuzo efew. Do you think ukuthi it is important for you to know your home language, and why is it important?
I do think it's important to know our mother's tongue, because that's who we are as people. Without it, we'll be lost.
Sithi mina njengoba ndingumXhosa ndenza esikoleni ndenza isiZulu because azange ndisifumane isiXhosa esikolweni, and that's not right, because I'll adapt to kuSizulu, forgetting ilanguage yami kancinci kancinci.
According to Nina, xa nicinga, how can we promote ilwimi lasekhaya uba luthethwe even more apha emhlabeni wethu njengabantu abatsha?
Kungaba right if each school can have all the home languages, like sibe khona isiSuthu, kube khona umfundisi wesiXhosa, Zulu, all these languages, man, kuze kube fair and square nakwabanye abantwana.
For example, I'm colored, so I would like to learn like Afrikaans.
Okay, xa nicinga izosinceda ngantoni uba sikwazi ukuthetha ilanguage zethu sizifunde each and every day?
You can also make your choice to learn different languages, so when you move to some other place, you can still communicate.
I don't think ukuthi kwamele ukuthi vele uyikhohle ilanguage yakho, ngoba if uyikhohle ilanguage yakho sho ukuthi nawe ufuna ukukhohle ukuthi la kubuyaphi.
Uzazi manje ukuthi ungubani, uzazi ukuthi ubuyaphi. Yes, ungazifunda ezinye ilanguages zabanye abantu, kodwa don't forget yours. Be proud of who you are.
And what I noticed, Duba, they all expect us to study English and we speak English esikolweni, but now umhlaba uyachinja, schools are changing, teachers are teaching us in Zulu, the languages that we prefer. We are able to ask them questions in our languages and they respond back in other languages. But the limitations of languages that are in schools are really putting other children in pressure. For example, the Afrikaans children. Last year there was no Afrikaans. They were forced to learn Zulu by force.
siphinde sinamkele nisahleli nathi apha e-Expressions. SingamaXhosa ke sixhosa isixhosa esinganxengwanga siqhela iqhwane. Kuba kaloku namhlanje sithetha ngomba obaluleke kakhulu, indigenous languages. Kwaye siyakubuza apha ekhaya into yokubana njengomntu omtsha ubona kubalulekile ukuba siphucule indigenous languages apha eMzantsi Afrika. Qiniseka ke into yokubana wenxulwa nathi ke kumakhasi ethu onxibelelwano kuba kaloku apha e-studio ndineendwendwe zabantu abatsha who are embracing their indigenous languages kumacandelo ahlukileyo. Kodwa ke ngaphambi kokuba ndithethe nabo ndifuna nje to read some of your comments enithe nasibhalela zona phaa ku-social media. Uthi ke omnye, I think they died the day we stopped being conscious about being black. We do not have love for ourselves. We do not even want to speak our own languages. Uthi ke omnye, our languages are our culture and tradition. Xa uthetha isiXhosa uthetha isiXhosa qho. Xa ma ukhuluma isiZulu phaqa. Ha ubuwa Sesotho saniti. Ha ubulela Shipedi shaniti. Indeed, our languages, our commodity. Mandinibulise ndinamkele Expressions, right?
Yeah, ergabotse.
Ana ke siame tota le khaitsedi ke mafulufulu.
And you're going to be expressive, ningabantu abatsha. Lucky, I want to start with you because I mean, uthe qolo uzama ukuphucula ulwimi lwakho kwelicandelo okulo lobugcisa the art. Khasiqale banzi ngomsebenzi owenzayo. Kwaye intoni yakhuthaza ba ungene.
Okay, now I think for now ke lemogile gore lead artist ra le maikarabelo a mantsi fela mo setšhabeng gore tlamile re dire batho aware ka karolo ya puo gore karolo e tsa mo setšhabeng. So I've been involved ka di projects tse dintsi ke kotse script le South African State Theatre headed by ekhaya wa Magogodi during the hard lockdown ne ke performa re tsa di show ko staging. First time ke le mo TV, you know, I was paid for gore ke bua Setswana wa bona. So ne re bontsha basha gore you know ka Setswana ka puo go ga lona o gona go dira tšhelete, and this thing re startile ka nako tsele ya motswako wa bona, you know, to honor the legacy ga WHP, you know, ha tswa ka ntsa da bontsha batho gore no ka puo ya gago o gona go America o gona go performa go le gongwe ka gore imagine, you know, WHP had a track le nas, man, for us as young people that time and re inspire gore you know what ka le la go ga ela ga mme, you know, dilo di tla nna shapo fela ke dire madi ke phela.
Umile unqungile ngalo ulwimi lwakho in the name of preserving your language. And ndifuna ukuza kuwe Thabang kuba nawe uthe qolo uyasebenza ngalo ulwimi lwakho. And ngiyacinga into yokubana ngokhethe mhlambe wenza izinto zenzayo wazenza ngesilungu. Kodwa uthe no, I want to be grounded and rooted kulwimi lwami. Kutheni nje kuye kwabanjalo?
Ke tswa bokutupu mafara bokone sesula mankalankatana go botlhokwa as a young person gore o tsebe gore o mang o tswa kae o ya kae. Our identity is very important. When you look at back ba gologolo ba rena ba lwele gore tšatšing le legono ke kgone tswa re ke nna mang. Le nna go botlhokwa as a young person to make sure gore in 10 years time bana ba banyane they will know my language. So ke mushumo ke nyaka gore o tswele pele gobane ke nyaka gore ngwana mo lo mong a tsebe gore ke mang. Ba seke ba lahlega.
Ke rata dimana e dirang ka teng ebile wa inspire gore ke more ke re tlhoka di artists tse di yana go Art Fella Festival. E le gore ne re dira Art Fella Festival re supportiwa ke government re tlisa di artists tse di tshwanang le ene gore ba perform ka Setswana ka Sexhosa ka siZulu, you know. Yeah.
And nathi siyangena phakathi inside at festival.
Right now da ke tla go dira MC.
And ndifuna ungena nakuwe mnumzana uXoli kuba wena uye wenza iPhD yakho ngeSixhosa. Intoni eyathi ikhuthaza into bana uwenze ngeSixhosa kwaye zintoni mhlawumbe ubufuna ukuziphucula njengoko uthe wenza le PhD yakho?
Mandibulele msasazi ndibulise nabo xabam apha ke e-studio. Uyakukhumbula into yokuba ilwimi zethu akukunintsanga okubhaliweyo ngazo ngokusingiseke kuncwadi lwesifundo ukutsho lento bathi literature of subject. Izinto ezininzi zibhalwe ngesiNgesi, lento kuye kuthiwe kunzima ukufunda nokufundisa ngesiXhosa okanye ngeSetswana ngoba izokufunda nokufundisa zibhalwe ngolwimi lwasemzini. Ukwenjenje okuzama ukuguqula loo nto kuba zizawuthi ukuze zibe khona izinto zobungcali ezibhalwe ngelimi zethu sizibhale thina zinali zazo sizibhale ngezilimi zethu. Ibikuguqula ke lo mkhuba ke ukuba kuthiwe hayi ezilimi azinakusetyenziswa ukufunda. Ndabona into yokuba isidanga sam sobugqirha lwazi mandisibhale ngesiXhosa njengoko ndandenzile nakwisidanga semasters naso ndasibhala ngesiXhosa. Ndathi kwafuna ukulungisa kwalento into ukutsho oko ndigalela esivivaneni ukuba kubekho okubhaliweyo okubobungcali okubhalwe ngeelwimi zethu. Yiloo nto ke bendizama ukuyiguqula ngokwenjenje.
I'm loving this conversation because ngiyayithanda nokuthi siyangena nakwizobuchwepheshe sizi expressa in our languages. Ngenxa yexesha siyabulela kakhulu ngexesha lenu. Nawe mnumzana apho ku Zoom siyabulela kakhulu ngexesha lakho. Siyathemba into yokubana abantu abatsha bafundele likhulu. Thank you so much guys.
Thank you
so much.
Ayike mbukeli wami ndiyathemba into yobana ufunde into ke namhlanje kuba nyani ulwimi lwethu singabantu abatsha lulo oluzawusikhokela lusise enyanisweni. Ngokuma sithi qhwe venkileni qiniseka uphoswa kuninzi esikuphathele khona. Siyabuya go.
Welcome back. You're still watching Expressions, your #1 youth current affairs show. Lehone, we are speaking about indigenous languages, and the whole question that we've been asking, and hopefully you've been responding to it, is just to really find out, as a young person, do you see the need to promote and develop indigenous languages in South Africa? So also, the challenge we're also posing, don't be like me, ne? You must respond in your indigenous language around that particular poll question. And of course, we're going to be looking forward to just really sharing how much you as a young person are able to just be conversant in your own language. So gentlemen, why should we still fight for the preservation, development of our indigenous languages? Maybe let me start with you, Bakoli.
Look, let's first start with this comment that English is not your measure of intelligence. And I think that's the mistake that we make, that you hear Bakolile speak such fluent English and you think it's the smartest thing in the world. In reality is that the depth of knowledge comes from your indigenous language. Some maths, life science, physical science, you know, in all the languages, on all the subjects that are available in schooling, I actually have a better depth of understanding of that particular subject. And I think what we've seen today from the young people that spoke in their own indigenous languages, even somebody doing a PhD, that we want to make sure.
Can we just say halala to that? That is so, that is incredible. That is absolutely incredible.
Amazing.
I mean,
it's absolutely amazing. And I think that's where we should draw strength, because what the basic education department should be doing is to say, there's the choice. Parents, learners can choose. This is the pathway I want to take, using Sesotho to study all of my languages, or using Venda to do all of my studies in education, and ultimately have a depth of understanding. English is just a communicating language.
I love that. Prof?
Yeah, no, we can't stress enough the fact that English is not a measure of intelligence. It's just a communication tool. You know, trying to suggest that when you speak Setswana like I do, I'm kind of, there's something wrong. I'm not sophisticated enough for me to show that I'm sophisticated. I should perhaps be speaking, you know, some flawed Setswana. So we have to undo that mindset. So if you are a youth, there's nothing wrong if you're fluent in your home language. Be proud of it, right? And it does not mean you know, your English will be weak, because like Prof. Lulama was saying, people think the language works like pedals. You know, for you to increase English, you have to release your speed. No, you know, they go together. You can hit both pedals at the same time and still be good.
What I loved, Kolosa, about this conversation is just really around the fact that Tina, as SABC, this is not something that we are doing lip service to. We're not saying, hey, indigenous languages are great, in Tony. We're actually going to have a whole entire channel.
24 hours.
24 hours. News, information, knowledge, zonke. And I think what it's going to do for languages as a whole in South Africa is that it is actually going to give it the status and the usage that it actually deserves. So kudos to SABC. I love working for this corporation.
Yes, and I mean, from today's conversation, the future of indigenous languages, so funeke siqiqe siqonde siqaqambe lalela.
Yes, in Betty, there's something like that. But to you, our viewer, thank you so very much for watching today's episode. Please embrace your languages, love our languages. I think more than anything, develop, plan, whatever needs to happen. Let's really embrace who we are as South Africans, I think, on this continent and the world over.
Yes, and as in the performance,
thank you, Jacob.
Bye.
Bye.
ngifuna ukuya eCongo ngimtholile ngimthandayo khona lena eCongo
Maya.